and then you say, well, I only found 3 people, I'm gonna go out another 2 miles, those investors are not necessarily investing in that area. So I say go really deep in that data, and I think going 3 years back in that data is way more efficient than it is going wide.
Welcome back, guys, to another video in this series. I think we're up to like video 11.
Yep, we made it.
Wow, we are cranking these out, Tony. Guys, I hope you're getting a lot of value out of this. Be sure to let us know what you're learning, what your big takeaways are, if you have questions, how we can help you, how we can serve you. And again, make sure you leave a comment and share your appreciation for Tony for taking time, flew down here to Puerto Rico. We're in my event center at my hotel, and just really trying to give you so much value around this very specific topic of exit strategies. And so again, thank you, Tony.
Yep,
you're the best. And I just appreciate you. I'm so grateful for our friendship. We do some stuff outside of real estate. Like we did a Spartan together last summer, and my boys sure love you. And you're just such a great guy. And I just appreciate your authenticity, how real you are, how honest you are. You're just one of those few people that I get to be friends with that's like no fluff, all real. And you don't get that very often, so I just want you to know how much I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you keep saying I flew all the way down here to Puerto Rico to do this for free. It's like, we're not in Memphis, we're in Puerto Rico, right? And no shade on Memphis. That was the first city that came to mind. But to come down here and do this with you and be able to teach, and, I think every time we're together, we kind of learn a lot from each other, and I've
learned a ton.
Yeah, we have a similar style of giving real information. There isn't fluff. Like we get so excited about teaching this stuff because we do it in our businesses, and we know the success that we've had, and we know not a lot of people dig into like this nitty gritty of the numbers and the logic and why you do these things. A lot of people talk about these exit strategies, but who's really teaching it at this level? So to have this opportunity to come down here and do it with you, of all people who I admire and look up to in this industry, and as a person, has been a true blessing for me.
Yeah, it is true. Like it's been fun in between like our videos where, I'm calling about a deal where the closing got pushed back and how we're doing this and that, and you're talking about it too, and how we handle this. And a wholesale business is really just like solving problems, and the better you solve the problems, the more money you make. And like that's all we do really, is just we solve problems all day long.
Yeah.
Right?
We solve complicated real estate transactions.
I love that. Like that's your definitely, like when you tell your aunt what you do, I solve difficult real estate transactions.
Yeah, then that's when the questions come in, because it's like, what does that mean? And then it's like, let me tell you, I'm a problem solver. Yeah, there's a lot of problems that need to be solved, and that's why we went into this, exit strategy series, because we went through the good, the bad, and the ugly of all of these, right? Mm-hmm. Like here's the challenges that are going to come with a fix and flip offer and exit. Here's the challenges and issues that come with buy and hold and the exit. Yeah. But here's the on the other side, here's the benefits of it for everybody. And just to give the broad picture, and that's why you have to have all these strategies, including, the flat fee MLS that we talked about in the previous video. You got to be well-rounded. And that process for me started with a problem that I had to solve, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. Right before we turned the camera on, one of my partners in Tulsa, Mark Gabriel, amazing guy, he called me yesterday and we talked about it, and then we've been trying to work through it. But basically we have a wholesale traditional assignment, right? So it's $325. We have a buyer for $360, $361 or something like that. And then closings tomorrow, and last minute, the buyer, his funding got delayed and he needs like a week or two. Now he's a legit buyer. He owns a ton of real estate. It's a buy and hold guy. He owns like 30 million in real estate, and he's willing to put down more earnest money. We might even get him to pay some of the fees. But I did one phone call to a mutual friend of ours, Scott Lurie, great guy. And Scott was like, closes tomorrow? Yeah, get me over. You got title ready? Yeah. Okay, shoot me over the stuff. I'll get it done for you. And literally in 24-hour notice, we're going to now fund this deal. Because the seller wouldn't extend. So we tried that first. Seller would not extend. It was like we would lose the deal. Now, if I didn't have this capital solution as a backup plan, and if I wasn't willing to solve a problem, we would lose this deal.
Right.
And we feel sort of like the seller would be okay with it because maybe they just would turn around and resell it or whatever reason, but we do not want to lose this deal. It's a great deal. And so here we are, like, solving this problem. And again, we're now switching to another strategy. We're bringing funding in. Yeah, the funding is going to cut into our margins because it was a straight assignment, but we're getting our deal done. We're going to see if we can pass off some or all of that cost to our buyer.
Right.
Because it's our buyer's fault we're delayed, not ours.
Sure.
So anyway, it was just a great example of, like, all these things we've been talking about throughout this series.
Yeah.
Of what it really means to do this business well. And if you don't have lots of different options, then you're going to get so pigeonholed that it's going to really hurt your business.
Yeah, I mean, it's happening in real time with me and you as we sit here over these last couple of days, where that was going to be a traditional wholesale deal to a buy and hold investor, which we went over.
Yeah.
And then now it's a takedown method because you're going to have to hold it for a couple weeks. So, I mean, we literally just went through all that.
Yeah.
And the numbers aren't really that far off, in terms of what we taught on the whiteboard in the previous videos. And now it's happening in real time.
And what's interesting is I said to Mark and Scott too, as I said, there's a risk here that we take it down and our buyer doesn't get his funding. And there's a risk for that. And now what? And I ran through the numbers with Mark and I said, well, if we lose this buyer, we're actually fine, because I think we could probably retail this for $390 or more.
Right. And you're
so
going to make
we'll
the
be
same.
fine.
Yeah, you're going to make the same assignment fee, right? And that's the beauty of having these exit strategies. If you didn't have that relationship and that in place, it's a lot better for a little bit of your margins to go away. Say it's $5,000, $8,000, $10,000, whatever. Say it's $10,000, even though it's not. Say that happens. Like, I would much rather take $30,000 than $0 on the deal, right? And we go back to that greed and that limited mindset and the ego thing of, we need these relationships and somebody that can solve a problem, get funding, close on the deal, and then wait 2 weeks to then sell it to your buyer. It cuts into your profit a little bit, but 30 grand's better than 0 grand, right?
Yeah, totally.
So
on this video, I want you, since we're really talking about exit strategies, I'd love, Tony, if you could share with everybody listening here some cash buyer strategies, right? Or I guess just buyer in general. But a lot of people think that you have to have this massive cash buyer list. If you don't, you're not going to be able to do the business. Or you got to have some kind of very expensive software that's going to find your cash buyers, right? And certainly as you progress and you can get more of those tools, the better. But help us kind of maybe demystify this whole idea that you have to have all these buyers in order to get started, at least get started, which it's not true, right?
No, it's not true at all. And, like I said in a previous video too, the number one thing I have, I wrote it on a piece of paper and put it in all my Dispo agents' cubicles, is your comps are your buyers. So however you locked up this deal and you were looking at the comps in your area, there's going to be cash comps in your area as well. And I think the mistake some people make when they're running cash comps and trying to find a buyer for this particular deal is they want to go really wide. People tend to say, man, I gotta hit so many buyers on this deal. I'm gonna, skip trace the whole zip code and try and send out a mass text. And it's like, the cash buyer that's probably gonna buy your deal is in that neighborhood, right? Just like when we're running comps, we don't want to go across any major highways or railroad tracks or bodies of water. We want to kind of stay in this specific area, right?
Yeah, I say this all the time. Your best buyer is an investor already investing in the same neighborhood.
Yeah.
Because they know the area. If they're buy and hold, all buy and hold investors love properties close to each other. If it's a flipper, they already know that neighborhood.
Yeah, they know the numbers. They have a crew there, they know exactly what they're doing.
Anytime you can find a buyer that's in the same neighborhood as your deal, that's your best buyer.
I agree 100%. So instead of going wide on your cash buyer data and who you're going to send this deal to and outreach to, I always tell everybody to go deep in that market. If you're only going back 6 months or a year in this particular area to find your cash buyers and your flippers and your buy and hold guys, and then you say, well, I only found 3 people, I'm going to go out another 2 miles, those investors are not necessarily investing in that area. So I say go really deep in that data, and I think going 3 years back in that data is way more efficient than it is going wide.
Wow,
so
that's cool.
Say you go 3 years back in that area, in that neighborhood, and you find all the flippers and all the cash buyers. And then we're trying to get about 20 to 30 new cash buyers for every single deal in our office, including agents, which we'll go into in a minute. But say you only get 15, now you start kind of branching off and going a little bit wider, right? I think, but you typically, if you go 3 years back in a good
Say
market.
That number 20?
Yeah, we want 20 to 30 cash buyers and or agents that we outreach to that represent buyers. And I'll explain that real quick.
Per deal. Meaning out of that 20 to 30, you'll probably get one that wants your deal.
Probably, yeah. That's kind of the ratio where, and that's real data where you're finding the cash buyer's name and you're getting their phone number, right? And same with the agents. So
that's consistent. I think I would agree with that. So like when I look up flippers in the neighborhood, it feels to me like if I call 20 agents that represented the flipper who, bought it, fixed it up, resold it, and I call that agent, I pretty much can find a buyer out of one of those.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever not been able to find a buyer.
Right. If your numbers are right, which we went over in the previous videos, and it makes sense, and you can explain that to an agent or a buyer, you're going to sell your deal, right?
Yeah.
So what I say is, using a platform like PropWire, right, where it has all that data in there, you can go back 3 years in that specific neighborhood, and you can find cash buyers, their name, their LLC. You can send it to a skip tracing company, or you can manually skip trace it, right?
Yep.
And if it's an
LLC,
LLC,
do it right in PropWire, you just skip trace it right there.
Exactly. If it's an LLC, you can find out on open corporates and that sort of thing. So skip tracing that data, and then those are going to be your cash buyers that bought the property cash, and then they never really exited it any other way, right? They just bought it cash, and
so in there, if it's under the cash buyer, all it means is they bought it cash. They still own it probably. And the flipper one means they bought it and sold it in an 18-month window.
Right, so, at a low price to a higher price, right?
And you can look in the thing and see, okay, they bought it for 120 and sold it for 250. Okay, that was a flipper, and they did it in 4 months.
Right. Yeah, that's a flipper, right? Yeah. And I think people make the mistake of just doing cash buys, and you're going to get some buy and hold guys, and you're going to get a lot of landlords. You're going to get some flippers that are in the middle of their flip. They bought it cash and they're flipping it. But you're missing out on so much good data of the flipper data. When you go 3 years back, you're going to find a lot of properties that fit that criteria in PropWire of that flipper data where they bought it at a low price, sold it at a higher price within 18 months. It's probably a flipper. Obviously, anytime you do that, there's going to be some false positives in there, but that's fine. That's with anything.
You'll see people that just did a deed transfer from one entity to another or whatever, stuff like that.
But that's no big deal. So you want to get that flipper data as well. And then, say we skip trace it. Skip tracing isn't 100%. Say we skip trace all that data and, it spits out, 15 cash buyers for us, right? We couldn't really get a hold of the rest. Well, even with that 15, when we're trying to get to 30, no matter what, if it spits out the buyer's number or not, we still want to go back on the MLS data and we want to find out, did they buy this cash on the MLS and did they use a buyer's agent? If they did, that's super easy to find, right? Usually the buyer agent has their number on there, their phone number, even their email. You can see who they used to buy it. If it doesn't have their phone number, you literally just Google their name, realtor in that market, and their face and their number and their email pops up. It's so easy to find a cash buyer's agent if they bought it on the MLS. And same on the flippers. If a flipper buys a property cash and then flips it, they're always going to use a listing agent, and that listing agent data is there on the MLS too, which the MLS data you have in PropWire works. It's also on Zillow if you want to cross-reference it, but no matter how many cash buyers you pull in this area in the last 3 years, not only do you want to pull the cash buyer data where hopefully you can get a hold of that buyer and not have to go through an agent, but at the very least, if they bought it cash on the MLS, or if they flipped it, you can absolutely get a hold of the buyer's agent they used to buy it for cash on the MLS, because that's the agent closest to the buyer on the transaction. And then the listing agent on the flip is the agent closest to that investor on the flip. And those agents are perfect to reach out to because you know that's their phone number, where skip tracing isn't 100% on the buyers. And you know they're an agent, you know they work with that investor. So
and you don't have to compensate them. I used to try to offer compensation. I stopped doing that years ago. I haven't offered one of those agents compensation in forever because they're already motivated to bring another deal to their investor.
Right.
Because they look good, they're going to get the backside when that investor flips it or whatever. They might know other investors. So a lot of times I'll talk to that agent and they'll say, yeah, I'll reach out to them, but I know other investors too that might be interested in this.
Yeah, it happens every time. If they work with one investor, they usually work with a few, if not a ton.
So it's better anyway in a lot of ways.
It's better anyway. I agree. Because they're motivated. They're, like you just said, they're motivated to get a deal. Maybe they get a finder's fee from their buyer on a buy.
Think how good they look when they go to a flipper and they say, hey, I got another deal in the same neighborhood. You want to take a look at it? They're guaranteed to get the back end listing on that.
Yeah,
they found the deal.
100%. Yeah, I agree. So we want to hit this from every angle when we're trying to call and text our new cash buyer data that we found for each deal, and the same thing with the agents that are connected to that investor. So you give me a deal anywhere in the U.S., and I'm obviously you too, where it's in a market where there's investing going on, right? Don't give us something in the middle of nowhere. But if it's in a market, there's action going on, you give me just that data, I'm going to get that property sold.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Just that. And it's free. Basically free, other than maybe a little bit of skip tracing or whatever, but it's totally free. And going back to break this down a little bit further, you talked about the cash buyer. When I'm getting that MLS data, I like to look at 3 different transactions. One would be the cash when they bought. So that'd be your lowest. So you can go in there and look at, okay, lowest sold homes. Great. These ones sold at the bottom of the market, probably an investor. Do a little research. Okay, they bought it cash. That's an investor. Right now, that investor is probably renovating it to flip or whatever, but they're active in the deal. But I'm looking at when they bought it cheap. Then I'm going to look at active. So what's for sale? Look at that. That's a flipper. I know it's a flipper because it's renovated, it's vacant, and it might be staged. So maybe they're thinking about their next deal. And then we look at the sold flipped.
Yep.
So you really have 3 different angles to look at for data of active investors in that neighborhood.
Right. And you're going to see all that data in the data too. You can obviously look at it, on Zillow. But you can look at it in PropWire, where if it is a flip and it's pending on the MLS and that cash buyer bought it 6 months ago, he's going to pop up as a cash buyer instead of a flipper because it hasn't sold.
And that data validates a lot of things for you. I was just doing this on a deal and doing a little training around it, and it was so confirming to me because what I was finding is I had the contract, I had my Dispo number, right, my exit number, and then as I was looking at the data, the number that I wanted to take this to market was aligning really well with the numbers they were paying.
Yes.
Because I can see what they bought it for.
Yeah. So now, I love when that lines up.
Oh my gosh, because it's like, okay, I got this right. Because the number I want to take to market is the number they're paying. So when I call that guy and I'm like, hey, I got another deal, here's my number. That's what he bought on the last one in the same neighborhood. Yeah,
it's a no-brainer.
He's not going to have an issue with it.
No, what can he say? He bought it for that price, and he's renovated the one and made money on it.
Or that could be feedback. You could be like, hey, I'm at this number, but man, all my data's saying that these guys paid way lower or way higher. Am I off somewhere?
Right.
Like, it's just feedback.
And then like we said on the previous videos, especially on the fix and flip one, of what is the percentage our buyers are buying at?
Yeah.
And when you run your formulas and you look at that data of all the low cash buys, it's like, all right, what are they truly buying these properties at? Like, do my numbers make sense or not?
Right.
Because if they're buying 30 grand less than you think they are, your numbers are way off, your formula's off, right?
I'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this video today, right here where I'm recording at the Looking Glass Hotel and Event Center. Located in the heart of San Juan, Puerto Rico, just 10 minutes from the airport and walking distance to the best restaurants, shopping, and beaches, this newly renovated hotel is the perfect spot for meetups, events, retreats, and podcasting. So if you want to create an unforgettable experience, come to the Looking Glass Hotel and Event Center. click the link below this video in the description for more details.
Right.
It's the fastest way to find out if you're way off or not.
Yes.
Start looking at the cash buyer data in the neighborhood, especially if it's recent, and you're going to know right away because you'll see a trend. Like you'll see some consistency.
Yeah.
Of where the buyers are all falling in.
Yeah, you'll see some one-offs that you want to, grab onto, but it's like you can't use that one-off if there's 10 properties that sold cash, 9 of them were within 10 grand of each other, and then this outlier was, 50 grand more. Yeah, you got to stop yourself on using that one. What does the data truly tell you?
It's interesting because Tony, if you can take your ego out of the way or your emotion out of the way and just be a data-driven investor, then the numbers don't lie.
No.
And we keep saying that over and over again.
Yeah.
When you're pulling up the data and you're looking at enough data to have a trend and consistency, then the data tells you everything.
Yes. Yep.
Now, if you're only looking at one piece of data, no, because that could be off. So I like to look at the data. I like to remove the outliers, the stuff way here and way up here, and find a consistent trend in the middle, average that out, and there's our number.
There's our number.
Why are we making this mean something else?
Yeah, it shouldn't, because it's just going to hurt your back end and your process and your cancellation rate. If you're not locking properties up at the proper price to where everybody wins on the back end, you can make an assignment fee, your buyer can get a good deal. You're doing all that work on the front end. You're spending all the money in marketing. You're spending all the time on the calls. You're making all the dials with the sellers. But if that doesn't transfer into a real deal at closing, it's all a waste of time. So you got to get your numbers really dialed in and understand your market and your buyers while you're locking up deals, which is something we've said ad nauseum over these videos, but it's so important.
Tell me if you do this. One of my favorite ways to do the data on the cash buy side, even ARV actually, is, and I have this in PropWire, when I'm looking at my comps, we have a category and it's the price per square foot number.
Right.
And very quickly, when I put my filters in, I'm looking at my neighborhood, I'm looking at the data, instantly I'm thinking, okay, where's the highest price point and the lowest? And let's just say I'm seeing stuff coming in at $38 a foot, $40 a foot, $39 a foot, $41 a foot on the low side. And then on the high side, I'm seeing 180, 175, 189, 190, then I'm like, okay, I'm seeing a cluster here and a cluster here. I know my market now. I know here's where they're buying, here's where they're selling.
Yeah. We use that not on every single deal, because sometimes you just look at the comps and it's so apparent.
It's right there.
But I definitely do the price per square foot when looking for an ARV and looking for what cash buyers are buying at. One little tip I want to give everybody too, and I love when a cash buy is sold on the MLS, because that's a true number that cash buy sold for. And a lot of people don't know this, but when you look at off-market data only and stuff that was never listed on the MLS, and you see that cash buy number, if it was a wholesale deal, then that purchase price for cash by the cash buyer is what you had it under contract for with the seller. The assignment fee is not baked into that number, because that assignment fee does not record as towards the sale of the property. It's a fee. So if you sold a deal off market to an investor for $80,000 and you had it under contract with the seller for $60,000 and your assignment fee was $20,000, it's going to show up on off-market data as sold for $60,000 to that cash buyer, when really the cash buyer paid $80,000 for it. So when a property sells on the MLS, and it's, we talked about flat feeing and wholesaling deals on the MLS, but 9 times out of 10, something sells on the MLS, it's not an assignment. It was a purchase by a buyer. Then that's more of a true number of what your buyers are paying for these properties on the MLS, because that's truly what the property sold for without an assignment fee baked into it.
That's a really good observation. Yeah. I didn't think of that, but that's so true.
Yeah, because I started going back and looking at my deals that we had wholesaled, and it just was very apparent in the off-market data. I'm like, well, man, we sold that for you know, we assign that over to a buyer for 100,000, but it's recording, you know, in the county data on off market as it got sold for 75. And then I started looking back and I said, oh, every deal I've assigned off market has, you know, the sale price is our purchase agreement with the seller.
And it's really easy to find, like, even like I do this on every single one. If I'm on Zillow or Redfin or whatever, as I go down to the transaction history and I go all the way down, and I'm always looking for, does this show what they bought it for?
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't, then they bought it off market because it's not going to be there. But if they bought it on market, it's going to be there.
Yeah.
You're going to see that they bought it through an agent for 100, and then, you know, 6 months later they list it, and then it gets sold for, you know, 220 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, okay, they bought it here, they sold it here. I can see how long they took. I can see what they did to the property. I can reverse engineer this entire flipper's whole model. And I know if they're legit, because if they did it in 4 months and it's a huge rehab, they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll see flippers where you're like, it took them like 12 months. And you're like, you lost money.
Yeah.
Because I see what you bought it for. I see when you sold it. I see the condition. And I see it took you 12 months. You lost money on that deal.
Well, those are our cash buyers that are paying most for our deals because they don't know what they're doing, which is why you got to watch our flat fee wholesale video, because those are the guys that overpay.
But it's just learning how to find the data, assimilate it, and then use it to make good choices now.
Yeah. There's no emotion in it. It's just, hey, these are the numbers. This is what we have to offer. This is what it's going to sell for because of this rehab. I mean, the numbers are right there. I'm a very logical person, and that's what I go off of in my business. And, you know, it works, because if you start bringing emotion into it, or ego, like you said, into it, it's just going to screw up your money and your deals, and you're not going to, you know, be focused on what matters, which is the numbers that do not lie.
Yeah. And this works with like all types of stuff. So I have a student who flips in Denver, and I was looking at a deal with him. And in this particular neighborhood in Denver, it was a high-end neighborhood, $1 million+ homes, up to $2 and $3 million homes. We looked at new construction flips. So I put a price filter in, or a year built at 2022 as the minimum year, which meant everything it's going to show was somebody who bought a lot, built a house, and sold it.
Mm-hmm.
And there was lots of them. I'm like, okay, this is an active new construction flipping market. Mm-hmm. And then I started to go through the flippers that sold a home for $2 million, 1.8, 2.4. And I'd go back into their history, just right on Zillow or Redfin, and I'd say, okay, they bought the lot for $550. You know, a year later, they listed this house for sale for 2.1. Mm-hmm. And then, okay, let's look at another one. Pretty soon I'm like, okay, they're buying lots between $550,000 and $600,000 in this neighborhood. And we're looking at a deal that's listed for like $515. I'm like, that's a deal. That's a deal, because we know that these guys are paying that much to buy lots over there.
Right. And it amazes.
It's just the data.
It's just the data. And how did whatever listing agent put that, you know, lot out there for, you know.
And it was a house.
Oh, and it was a house.
And what they're doing there is they're infill lots, so they tear them
Got
out.
it. Yeah.
It's one of those markets. I mean, that's how we do Paradise Valley. We're buying some 80s house with low ceiling height.
Yes.
And demoing it and building a multi-million-dollar home.
Those infill lots are gold. I mean, they're so great because, like you said, going back to the data, it's right there. There's no guessing work. You know, the utilities are to the property. You can see in the data what people are paying and what they're building and getting. And it's like, and your buyers are right there.
Isn't it crazy that we can sit on a computer, and if we know what to look for, we can transact millions of dollars in real estate?
Yeah, I don't have my real estate license, you know, and I make millions of dollars in real estate. It's a beautiful thing. Crazy. That's why this industry is great.
Yeah, well, this is a lot of fun. Tony, thank you for sharing some of these tips and strategies. I hope you guys got a lot out of like the cash buyer side. I'm going to leave some links in the description that you can follow Tony, learn about his training. He's got a community that he does, and it's really fantastic. And guys, stay tuned for the next video. We got some more coming up for you that we're really excited to share, and we'll see you on the next video.